I know I'm not the person you expected when you opened this. I'm not loud. I'm not young. I'm not here to sell you anything. But I am 91 years old, and I need to say something out loud, just once, while I still can. My name is Walter. This is a story about the kind of regret that doesn't scream. For most of my life, I was an insurance claims adjuster. 42 years of paperwork, careful conversations, staying calm while other people panicked. That probably tells you enough about me. I believed in order, in rules, in not making things harder than they needed to be. I played it safe. I paid my taxes. I stayed in my lane. I married my wife, Eileen, in 1963. We built a quiet life in a one-story house in Dayton, 2 kids, a steady routine, the kind of life that looks perfectly fine from the outside. I was never the dramatic type. I didn't slam doors. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cause trouble. People liked that about me. They called me easygoing, dependable, even keeled. And for a long time, I thought that was the same thing as being there. I told myself providing was love, and that love didn't need to be spoken. But there's something nobody tells you when you're the quiet one. Quiet men still shape the atmosphere around them. We still leave marks. We just do it slowly, in ways that don't look like damage at first. It was last spring when something small happened. My neighbor's boy, maybe 12 or 13, brought over my mail. The mailman had mixed up the envelopes again. The kid handed them to me with one of those casual smiles children have, like they're just filling the silence with words. He glanced past me into the hallway and said, "You must be real lonely in there." And he didn't mean anything cruel by it. He was just talking. But I thanked him, closed the door, and stood there for a long moment, holding the envelopes against my chest. Because I couldn't argue with him. Not because loneliness was new, but because, somewhere along the way, I had made my life quieter than it needed to be. The biggest lie I believed, all my life, was simple. It's not urgent if no one's crying. That sentence sounds harmless until it becomes a habit. I told myself that for years, that everything was fine as long as nobody raised their voice, that silence meant peace, that if people weren't upset, then nothing needed attention, that time could wait, that the small things could always be done later. So I lived by that rule. I skipped the phone calls because there was always next week. I skipped the hugs because everyone seemed fine. I skipped asking the second question when someone said, "I'm okay." I skipped the slow dinners, the long pauses, the ordinary moments that didn't feel important enough to interrupt the routine. None of it felt urgent. No one was crying. So I assumed it could wait. And that's how the pattern begins. Not with cruelty. Not with abandonment. With postponement. With the belief that love is something you can handle eventually, once everything else is finished. I started working full-time when my son Jason was 4. He used to tug on my pant leg when I came home, excited to show me something he had built or drawn. Sometimes I went with him right away. Sometimes I said, "Not tonight, buddy. Daddy's tired." It was never a harsh refusal, just a delay, just a quiet decision. And those decisions are easy to make when you believe nothing is wrong. With my daughter, it was softer. She was close to her mother, and I told myself that was normal. I showed up for the big events, the visible ones, the ones that counted on a calendar. In our house, nothing ever exploded. There were no screaming matches, no slammed doors. Just a steady, gentle drifting into routine. Eileen would leave notes sometimes, small reminders on the fridge. Milk, appointments, little things. She didn't yell, She didn't demand, and I mistook that calm for certainty. I thought, as long as no one was crying, everything was fine. That was the pattern. That was the lie. And it started, like most lifelong mistakes do, quietly. It always begins that way. Not with anger, not with a fight, not with some dramatic moment you can point to later and say, that's when it all broke. It begins with comfort, with the belief that tomorrow is guaranteed, with the assumption that the people around you will keep reaching out, keep asking, keep waiting. And so the pattern continues. You delay the call because you're busy. You assume the hug can happen later because you'll see them again. You hear, I'm fine, and you accept it because it's easier than digging deeper. You let ordinary moments pass because they don't feel urgent enough to hold on to. Quiet damage doesn't demand your attention. It doesn't scream. It doesn't throw things. It simply accumulates in the background, like dust in a room you swear you'll clean one day. Years went by that way. Jason grew older. The tug on my pant leg disappeared. Conversations became shorter, more polite. I told myself it was normal. Boys grow up. They get busy. They build their own lives. My daughter became an adult too, and I watched from a respectful distance, proud in the way quiet men are proud silently, without saying much. Eileen and I kept living side by side, sharing groceries, sharing routines, sharing the same house. Everything looked stable. Everything looked fine. And because no one was crying, I believed nothing was wrong. That's the dangerous part about the pattern. It teaches you to measure love by emergencies. It convinces you that if there's no crisis, there's no problem. So you keep skipping the small repairs. You keep letting silence do the work of distance. Until one day, something happens that is still quiet, but impossible to ignore. A few years ago, I sent Jason a birthday card for his son, my grandson. It was simple. Just a plain envelope, my careful handwriting on the front, a short message inside. I even tucked in a $20 bill, the way fathers do when they don't quite know how to reach across years. I remember sealing the envelope at the kitchen table. The house was still. The clock ticked in the next room. I told myself it was enough. A week later, the card came back in the mail. Unopened. The envelope looked exactly the same, except for the return stamp and the slight bend at one corner, as if it had been handled without care. On top of it was a yellow sticky note. Just one sentence, written in blunt, unfamiliar ink. Please don't send things anymore. That was it. No explanation. No call. No argument. Just that. I sat down slowly, like my legs had forgotten what to do. The kitchen smelled faintly of dish soap and old paper. The sticky note had that sharp chemical scent of glue, artificial and clean, completely out of place against something as human as a family name. My fingers hovered over the edge of the envelope. I didn't open it. There was nothing to open. The silence in the room felt heavier than it should have. No voices, no footsteps. Only the hum of the refrigerator, steady and indifferent. I stared at that note for a long time. It was such a small object. A square of yellow paper, a sentence of ink, but it carried years inside it. Every skipped call, every postponed visit, every moment I told myself could wait. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. That's not who I was. I just sat there, holding the envelope between my hands, listening to the quiet I had practiced for so long. And for the first time, the pattern showed itself clearly, not in a dramatic explosion, but in an unopened card, in a returned gesture, in a silence that finally had words. After that, time moved in strange ways. Days still passed. The sun still came through the windows. The grocery store still needed trips. The television still filled the evenings with other people's laughter. But something in me had shifted. It wasn't dramatic. It was just the awareness that quiet isn't always peace. Sometimes it's absence. About a year after Eileen died, I was sitting alone in the den. The house felt larger without her, as if the walls had stepped back to make room for emptiness. I had the television on, some old rerun I wasn't really watching. The kind of noise you keep around so you don't have to hear your own breathing. There was a glass of water on the side table beside me. The room smelled faintly of lemon floor cleaner, the kind Eileen used to buy. Sharp and bright, trying too hard to feel fresh. Late afternoon light spilled through the curtains, turning everything soft and gold, almost beautiful in a way that made it worse. Then I heard it. The answering machine clicked on in the kitchen. One beep. Pause. Then silence. No voice. No message. Just the empty line staying open for a moment before the machine clicked off again. I didn't get up. I didn't lean forward. I didn't even wonder who it might have been, because I already knew it wouldn't be for me. That's the kind of knowledge loneliness gives you. Not the pain of missing people, the certainty of not being expected. I sat there staring at the muted television screen, the glass of water untouched, the air still smelling like lemon and dust. Minutes stretched. The silence wasn't loud. It was indifferent. And that's when the realization came, cold and simple. I had become invisible by my own hand. Not because I was unlovable, not because the world was cruel, but because, for decades, I had practiced distance in small ways. I had trained the people around me to stop reaching. I had taught them that my love was quiet, and eventually they stopped listening for it. I believed the lie that nothing mattered unless it was urgent, unless someone was crying, unless there was a fight. But life doesn't always break with noise. Sometimes it fades. People don't always leave in anger. Sometimes they leave in exhaustion. They stop trying to pull you closer. They stop asking. They stop waiting. And you don't even notice until the phone doesn't ring anymore. Until the card comes back unopened. Until the only sound in your house is a machine picking up silence. If you're hearing this now, I want you to be honest with yourself. Not about the big mistakes, about the small ones, about the calls you keep meaning to make, about the apologies you keep saving for later, about the person sitting in the next room while you scroll, telling yourself there's time. Don't wait for someone to slam a door. Don't wait for someone to cry. Don't wait for the moment when silence is the only reply you get. Pick up the phone while your name still means something in someone else's day. Drive across town before the distance becomes normal. Say the awkward sentence now before it becomes impossible. Start with, "Hey, I don't know how to start, but I miss you." And because the truth is, regret rarely arrives like a storm. It arrives like dust. It settles quietly, layer by layer, until one day you look around and realize you're living inside something you built without noticing. And the scariest part isn't being alone. It's understanding, too late, that you chose it. Quietly, one small decision at a time. Don't let it go quiet.